Okay, here we are. It's Sunday night inside the game with Coach Jim and Coach John. We got two great guests tonight, Franz Innocent and Billy Gazonis. And I'm going to introduce Billy first, and then John's going to introduce Franz. And I know a lot of you people out there watching on Facebook and YouTube already know these guys really well, but for those of you who don't, Billy's from Trenton, New Jersey, which is one of the best soccer towns in the country, and it always has been. And he played for the Catholic high school there, and on the good club teams there, the best one was Trenton Extension, which was loaded with great players, Billy and Mooch Meyernick and Mike Angelotti and I think Art Napolitano and just a bunch of good players, Kevin Welsh, Bobby Smith. Anyway, so Billy went to Hartwick, and he was at Hartwick from 74 to 77. And we were at UConn. Franz finished in 74 rather. Sorry, Franz. John finished in 75 and I finished in 76. So we all played against each other in college. And Hartwick was a great team. UConn was a great team as well. In my time, we lost 6 games and 3 of them were to Hartwick. And so they broke our hearts more than once, knocked us out of the Elite Eight twice, and Billy made it to the Final Four 3 of his 4 years. And as a senior, he led Hartwick to the national championship. I think they beat San Francisco in the final. And at that time, San Francisco had a bunch of 28-year-old Nigerians that, if it was today, they'd be playing in the premiership. They wouldn't have come to college. These guys were legit. And also some good Norwegians, I believe, same age. Hartwick beat him with a bunch of Jersey guys with a couple of English guys thrown in. And so that was pretty impressive. And Billy not only captained that side, but he was the Herman Trophy winner, which for those of you that don't know, it's like winning the Heisman Trophy in football. And then Billy went on to play in the North American Soccer League for the Tulsa Roughnecks. And there was a few indoor leagues going on. I think the New York Arrows, and they were champions. So that's Billy's, in a nutshell, his playing career. His club team, Trenton Extension, made it all the way to the National Open finals. And I don't know if you won one of them or not. I know you went far a couple of times. You can talk about that. But we're so happy to have Billy here. And the reason Billy's here is because he wrote a book, and I read it this summer. And I sent it to John, and John read it, and I told Franz about it, and Franz read it, and we absolutely loved it. This is the book right here, and that's Billy with the long hair there. At least he has some left. I don't even have any left. So, but that's holding the championship trophy out in California when they beat San Francisco in the final, and he's going to tell us about that in a bit. So then now John's going to introduce. So Billy, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And now John's going to introduce Franz, and then we're going to let those two guys take over.
So Franz Innocent grew up in Haiti and learned how to play soccer, like probably with a rolled ball of thread or yarn, he was telling me. Came to Nyack, New York, as a probably young teenager. Franz, you can correct a little details if I have any. And came into UConn as sort of the main recruit in 1971 with Timmy Hunter from Westport, Connecticut. When that class came to UConn as freshmen in 1971, they were like tearing up the sub-varsity schedule and sort of striking fear into all the upperclassmen ahead of them. And that class did transform UConn from the fall of 71 on, right, to 74, which was Franz's tenure there at UConn. Franz was an All-American. Franz played in the college all-star games at the end. UConn was New England champions twice, I think, during your tenure, Franz, I think. And of course, we had our big run-ins with Hartwick in the regular season and in the NCAA tournament. Franz went on to play for the Connecticut Yankees, I think the Rhode Island Oceaneers, right? And
that's right. We're drafted by Dallas Tornadoes.
Okay.
At that point.
Yep. And for me, he was just always the greatest teammate and the greatest player to play with. He was always encouraging to me and just easy to play with and just an inspiration through his whole tenure at UConn. And then we played together for a long time in all of the adult leagues as well. So happy to have you on, Franz. And it was a nice connection to read about Franz in Billy's book. And that's a good format for, I think, this show, you know.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Great. So what I'd like to do is ask Billy, and take it anywhere you want, Bill. What advice would you give to a young player who wants to become great? And my first advice would be to read Billy Gazonis's book. But go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I think first of all, hard work, focus, and discipline are three attributes I think no matter what goals you pursue are necessary for any chance of having success. As far as soccer, I think you have to master the ball. You have to work on your technical skills all the time. If not hundreds of touches, I would say 1,000 touches a day, every day, to get incrementally better. And I don't think it stops from when you're young, when you're older, and if you're good enough to be a pro, even at that level, you have to constantly look to make yourself better. I think one aspect that young players could work on, and it's funny because when I played Little League Baseball, I can remember the coaches always telling you, like, if you were out in the field before every pitch, think about if the ball's hit you, what you're going to do with it. But I find in soccer, the coaches don't talk about thinking ahead and developing your vision. And for me, vision, without good vision, you can't be a great player. It has to be habit forming. I think, soccer is so fluid that you're constantly moving, the ball's moving, the opposing players are moving. So every few seconds, what you may or may not do with the ball if you receive it changes. So I think the players, even when you're just training and kicking the ball back and forth, if you get in the habit of having little glances, so it becomes so habit forming when you cross those white lines. And then I always say the $1 million question is always, what am I going to do before I receive the ball? And I was fortunate, my mentor, Charles Ping Pong Ferruta, he instilled in me, he wasn't satisfied with being one play ahead. He wanted me to be 3 or 4 plays ahead. And it is not easy to be 3 or 4 plays ahead on the soccer field, but that's what we strove for. And at times I could be there, if I was really alert, and things worked out that way. But I just think you have to have a passion and a love for the game. It's just something, the ball, you have to master the ball. I think either every time the ball comes to you, either you control the ball or the ball controls you. Either that first touch, you put it exactly where you want it because you know what you're going to do with it, or you don't control it perfectly and you're chasing the ball a little bit or moving in a direction you might not have wanted to. So I just think the ball and your eyes, because the vision, you have to survey everything. If you can't see everything on the field, then you really can't be sure what the best decision of what you're going to do with the ball is. So they would be my advice to a young player. Just master the ball and think ahead, looking around.
Thanks, Billy. That's fantastic.
That's great. So sort of to go along with that, Billy mentioned passion. I mean, 2 things that strike me about Franz are his creativity as a player and his love of the game. I don't think it's rivaled really with any of the friends that we knew at UConn. So Franz, it's the same question about what advice you would give to a younger player, but I think you could sort of talk about the origins of your love for the game, and that creativity spark is very difficult for players to have, and you definitely had it. So,
well, just listening to what Bill is saying is primarily a focus, a key point to it all. But on my side, everybody probably would be surprised that I came from Haiti when I was 15, and I never played organized soccer until my second year in high school.
wow.
Yeah, it was surprisingly, again, Billy you guys talk about the technical ability with the ball, making it part of your body itself. When I started, back in Haiti, as you mentioned, John, we used to stuff socks with pepper, and that was our ball, and that's what we started with.
Wow.
And once I get into United States and started to play, my first organized play was when I was a sophomore at Nyack High School, and a friend of mine was kicking a ball. He became a friend of mine. He was kicking a ball in the gym, and he was bouncing it against the board, and the ball came to me because I was just standing in the doorway, and I didn't know him. The ball came to my feet, and I just passed it back to him, and all of a sudden he turned back and looked at me. Surprisingly, that I didn't pick it up and throw it at him. And that was, I don't know if you ever heard of Lauren Green, and we became practically twins at that point. So that's where I started. But in the long run, to mention as far as the technical part of the game, I look at the kids nowadays. Technique, they can achieve it, Billy, because the love for the game. When you're working on technique is boring. You have to challenge yourself. The repetition is tremendous. Whereas now kids, unless somebody tells them to go play, that's when they started to do it. But for myself, once I see a ball, any type of ball that's rolling, I have to try to feel it. I have to put my barefoot if I have to, and then continue on from there. But the way I developed my skills were primarily, I think, the big challenge. It's difficult to do by yourself, although it's very necessary. But I had Tim Hunter at UConn, and the number of hours that Bill has spent, as he put in the book, was practically what Tim. Practically, we live together. We live together in the gym, challenging each other, playing the touches, and as well as competing against each other. So I think that's where I really got to develop the touch that I really feel very comfortable, and always feeling like the ball is part of myself.
Franz was your friend. Did it happen to be Randy Nelson?
Well, Randy was also my friend. Randy Nelson and Randy Sterling were the three amigos at that point at high school.
Okay.
And things that we're doing in high school, nobody else really could understand it, because we always had the understanding, the movement of the ball, the movement of the body in different positions. And I think that's why Tim Hunter ended up playing. We were number 4 in the nation in my high school. So we competed against Staples. That's why I met Tim Hunter, because they were also a very good team. So once we competed against each other, and then when we got into UConn, we realized there we were. So we built up that brotherhood, and then we start challenging each other, and the rest is becoming history.
That's great.
Yeah. Those two guys were 2 years ahead of me. Timmy and Franz and Timmy. You didn't say one name without the other. Probably like Mooch and Billy and Mooch, right? And they, like John said, they made us so much better. Those two guys. Every time I received the ball from either one of them, I had more time than when I received it from other guys. and it was easier to receive because it was just laid in on a silver platter. And that's what great players do. They make their teammates better. So,
that's interesting because you were up front and I was in back. So for me, it was they gave me an opportunity to pass the ball at the right time. And then you're saying the same thing when they advanced it one level farther up.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than being a number 9 and having somebody smash a crappy bouncing ball at you, especially when you got Mooch Meyernick on your back. You know?
That's true.
But, yeah, I was really a center back, defensive center mid, and Coach Maroney liked switching guys around for no apparent reason. And that wasn't a good move for me, but that's okay. Billy, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with ping pong and what your day was like? I know it's in the book, but I was really impressed to find out. I wasn't surprised, but I was really impressed to find out what you did in the summers between your years at Hartwick and how much time you spent doing it.
So I'm going to backtrack a minute, Jim. My junior year in high school, I went to a soccer camp at Rider University, which was then Rider College, and Manfred Schelscheit and ping pong were the 2 head instructors. And that's where I fell in love with soccer, because all of a sudden the light bulb came off what this big game, this beautiful game is really about. So I developed this friendship with ping pong, and every summer, literally Monday through Friday, he would come to my house like 8:30 or 8:45. My mother would make us breakfast, and then we would go to Nottingham. In between my senior year in high school and my freshman year in college, also Kevin Welsh would be there, Mooch Meyernick, and Mike Angelotti. So I would get to train with these guys. We would train from about 9:30 to like 3:30. Go home, and then Nottingham High at nighttime was like pickup soccer, and I'd go back there, I'd ride my bike back there, and literally there could be 25 guys there. We play a small-sided game, shirts versus skins. But, the next few summers, sometimes there was other players there, but sometimes I was alone with ping pong. It would be just me and him, and he had this belief that you had to master the ball. I mean, he wanted me to be so skillful that I could stick the ball up where the defender, where the sun doesn't shine, and pull it out. That was his belief. You have to be that skillful. And I remember the first time he said, go against the fence, and I didn't know what he wanted to do. And he drilled this ball from like 10 yards or 8 yards away, and it bounced off my knee. And he just started laughing. He says, you have to control the ball. So we actually started slowly, and Ping would hit balls at me at a slower pace. But eventually we got to where he would drive balls, and it would be from on the ground to my chest, and he always had this expression, the ball has to drop like Alabama cotton. Like if you dropped a piece of cotton, he wanted it dead still when I trapped the ball. And that's what we strove for. And like I said, the balls could be driven, and then as I got better and better, I would then do it with a moving trap. And the reality is, Jim, if someone's driving balls at you from 8 yards away, when you get in the game and one of your teammates passes you a ball, it's literally effortless. So I thought I never hear any people doing this, although a few people reached out and said, I'm going to do this with my son now that I read it. But it made it difficult, but you mastered the ball. It just became, like Franz says, you and the ball are one. Your body learned to just kill the ball and make it die. And then Ping, we would pick up different things like we would see some move that someone made, or like Beckenbauer, he would do this little skip off the ground to control balls that were real hard. And, we start practicing, and we could do, we could do 100, 200 in a row. Ping was just, he just believed in mastering the ball, and he would break down everything, like give and goes, like the distance, the speed, the angles, every little nuance. He would just talk about it, and we think about it, and we try it. And like I said, he expected perfection. He didn't want me to make a bad trap. He didn't want me to make a bad pass. And that's what we strove for. And every day, I try to get a little bit better. And Ping was a special person. He had a great soccer mind. He coached Trent Extension. he helped Mooch. He had other players after me that he would train individually, or with a few would come in the summer. He was just a special guy. I'm just a little unfortunate that he passed away a couple years ago. I would have loved him to see the book. I mean, he knew how much I loved him, and literally he flew out to the national championship game just for that game to see all his hard work, culminating with us winning a championship.
Yeah.
Well, if I could share some of my experiences as well, though, guys, since Bill is talking about where he started from, one thing that I didn't mention to you guys at the latter part of my high school, some of the challenges that I had to. I also played in some of the club teams. We had a bunch of Haitian in the Nyack area, New York area, so that we ended up having one of the club teams that I played for, Blomstrann Rouge, and in that respect, at that point, it was me and my brother Medrick and a bunch of those young little kids who would be playing every Sunday. Would be driving to Queens and Brooklyn and so forth, competing in the Haitian League. And apparently, the challenges that we met was that we had to get to the point where we could compete against team in Brooklyn, guys who were coming from this 1970 World Cup, because Haiti had made it.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's who we're competing against. And I can visualize some of the challenges to where those guys would be kicking the living out of you, and they would turn around and laugh at you. And so with my size, Billy, I wasn't that much bigger as well. So I had to learn how to maneuver my way around those big boys. A funny one for me was there was this 6-foot guy, Haitian guy, Sanon from Haiti. Came from Haiti, scored, I believe, scored against Italy, one of the World Cup matches. And I found myself in the midfield trying to challenge him. And he has the ball headed, and he's heading the ball, juggling the ball. I am on the backside trying to touch him, and I'm bouncing off of him and never. So those were the challenges that I think that helped me to carry on to become, again, a little bit more savvy on how to maneuver around the field. That's for sure.
Yeah, it struck me that Billy said in the book that they were afraid of Franz, at least in the second game of '74, because of his sort of unpredictability. And yeah, sometimes you would like bounce the ball with the sole of your foot off the field and over a defender's swing and stuff, and just do some stuff that we just didn't see with other players. And that's probably from all those challenges with older players in the Sunday leagues and stuff.
It's either that or get your butt kicked. That's all.
Well, at that time, the college game was pretty physical. And if you were a top player, nobody got kicked out of a game for a bad challenge back then. And people would try to kill Franz, and it was hilarious to watch because we knew what was coming because he'd done it to all of us, Franz had this thing where a ball would come in, he would catch it on his instep, just catch it on his instep. And the guy's running and he's ready to light him up. Franz would flip it up in the air and backpedal a step or two. The guy would go flying by. Franz would catch it on his foot, and he'd always go wheel to the guy. And we knew it was going to happen, and I never once saw a guy hit Franz. He always did that move, and it was just brilliant to watch because it was beautiful, really. And we knew it didn't come from God. We knew it came from hours and hours of practice. And it was so much fun to play with and against players like that. I know with Billy, if Billy made a bad pass in a match, I don't remember it, and it would be almost like, did you see that? He didn't connect that one, because he connected all of it as a center midfielder who was the hub of a good team. So he was getting the ball a lot. He was marked, he was kicked, and he never lost the ball, And I've seen a lot of college players since then. I've coached for all this time, and even the good ones, you can't say that about them, So, Let me see if there's any. Oh, for the people out there, we'd love to have comments and questions. And I'm getting better at this stuff. You know, I'll relay the questions on to these guys. I know I got some messages from former teammates of both of the guys that said they'd be watching. So, you know, any questions you want. In the meantime, I know, Franz, you have been a coach ever since you quit playing, and you didn't quit playing until very recently. I know that. But what advice would you give to a young coach, Franz, that you think might help?
Yeah, that's been about over 40 years now that I've been involved with the coaching part of it. At this level now, I'm an assistant at one of the high school in East Hartford here. What I would say to the coaches is pretty much be a little bit more patient with the kids, even though you'll demand a lot from them, but also allow them to be creative. You know, I think at every level. I notice that coaches trying to tell the kids how to work with the ball and not allowing the kid to be creative. The kids have to get the feel for it prior to. You can't tell them to touch it with the right foot, touch it with the left foot. That has to be instinct. And I believe some coaches get so defensive because the kid isn't doing the way they are told to do it. But I think in soccer, you just have to be patient and allow those type of creativity, especially at the young age as they progress from there.
Good. Yeah.
Billy, I know you shared with me that you coached maybe your daughter's team or a few teams. How about you? What would you say?
Well, I think obviously if you're going to coach the young players, you have to be a student of the game. I think you should try to take the best parts of the game. You know, different countries are good at certain things and study it. But to me, it still comes back, like Franz says, they're not robots. You want them to be creative and touch the ball and think for themselves and be clever. I focus on that. Like the players, like if you look at Messi and Cruyff, Messi, his game is really simple in that he can run at top speed, and because he plays with his left foot, every stride he takes, he touches the ball with his left foot. And I think it's like a basic fundamental dribbling skill, and most coaches don't teach it. So my youngest daughter, she was very talented, but she didn't really enjoy the game. But when she was at ODP, they had a training session, and they wanted all the girls to dribble that way, whether it was their predominant foot, halfway across the field and back. And literally my daughter was up and back before the players got halfway across the field. And it just dawned on me that they don't teach that. And it's almost, to me, it's a basic dribbling skill. Whatever foot you're predominant with, every time you touch the ball. And the beauty with Messi, because the ball stays so close to you, and Franz did that, the ball stayed so close to him, you can't tackle him. You have to backpedal and, you know, hope you get help, which is what we did my senior year. Timo said, we're going to, as soon as he gets the ball, someone's got to go over and give help, because they run with speed, and Franz had that ability to run at you with speed. The ball stayed so close, you can't tackle. So I just think as a coach for young players, they have to enjoy the game, because if they don't enjoy it, they're going to leave the game early. So it has to be fun first and foremost. And if you can keep the parents on the sidelines quiet, that might be advantageous also.
Good luck. Good luck with that. That was actually going to be a next question. Is the parents and you know, rather than just say, oh, you know, what are we going to do about the parents? Well, they're there. We got to do something. We got to work with them somehow. I know when I coached, I didn't do a lot of club coaching when I was coaching college. I put all my energy into the college team, but I did coach this team for a couple of years, and it was a real eye opener. They were 15-year-old boys. Franz, it was Tommy Goodman's club, world class. And the guys I had, they were called the Bad News Bears when I got them because they had all been cut from Oakwood. They all wanted to play for Oakwood. They weren't good enough. And so they played for this other club. So anyway, they were good kids. They were decent players, you know, for that level. And we had good training sessions, and you know, we played a lot of small-sided games in training. And then when the game came, we were terrible. And my daughter came to watch one of the games, and I can't hear. So that's a big problem sometimes. So she came over to me after the game and said, you know, those dads are telling them all kinds of stuff, and it's like the opposite of what you're telling them. And so I went, oh, no wonder the players were so bad, because they'd had their dads as coaches up until they were about 12, till they started playing, you know, travel club. So what I ended up doing with first I was going to tell them sit down and shut up, but you know, they're not going to. And so I said to them, okay, here's the deal. This is what I want you to say. I want you to tell them when they get the ball to hold on to it, because they play one touch all the time and they couldn't play one touch. It was all over the place. So we were working on getting comfortable with the ball. So he said, tell them to hold on to the ball. And that's all. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, just tell them that, because that's what I'm telling them during the week. This was early in my time with them. And so we started doing that every week. I would tell them a different thing or add something, and they started doing it. And the kids started playing a lot better. And everybody was happier because we were all rowing the boat in the same direction, you know? So that's what I did. I don't know, you know, what you guys, John, you've had some experiences with parents. And one of them was the Maronis, right?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about parents too much, but I just want to pick up on what Billy said, in that, because Franz, I think, can add to this. Is like after we were there at UConn, there were two players, Elvis Comrie and Pedro de Brito. And, you know, I was playing against them sort of as an alumnus in like all spring games and things like that. And Franz has played with and against them. And what Billy said was Pedro to me, and that, you know, he would come right at my front foot with speed, with the ball under control, just like he's saying about Messi. And it was almost a hopeless task for me as a wing back to defend Pedro. Whereas Elvis, as talented as he was, he used the inside of his foot more, and he used both feet, and he was slower. He almost wanted you to dive in, and I was smart enough not to dive in. So to me, Pedro was a whole different level of problem than Elvis was. And it was a lot of what Billy was saying, just coming at you with every touch under control, right where you had to eventually make a tackle or you'd be back in the goal, you know? So Franz, I'm sure you have some experience with those two as well, you know?
Yeah. Again, I think my advice to most of those guys once I left UConn, not only those two guys, but most of the other guys who came after me, was the fact that I think, Billy, we talked about the contrast between Timo and Moroni, which are the two extremes. I think Timo, soccer-wise, was a genius. And Moroni, on the other side, was one of the best organizers that I were regimented practically. So what my advice to most of the good players coming out to UConn was the fact that you have to play for yourself. Not to pay Moroni no mind. But that really never sinks in until those players become juniors. You know, because now they start realizing that I don't have to listen to them. I just have to go and play and produce from there. So that's what I find with, you know, the Pedros, the Elvises, and so forth. A lot of the good guys that came through UConn. The first 2 years, they really didn't produce that much. But as they progress to the junior year, where they start become a little bit freer and become a little bit more creative as far as, you know, listening to what Moroni was saying and so forth. So that's how I saw those two guys. And another part of I think you guys were talking about coaching and expectation. Yeah, and the parents. I think what I find is coaching at the different level, at the youth level versus as the kids start progressing, the expectation of the coaches. I think we want the kids to win at age 5. They need to win ball games. They need to win, 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 win. So I think that's why we don't really allow them to become creative. To give them the freedom, go and have fun, do what you can do it. But as they progress to the 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, the expectation should be a little bit higher. The touches should be much more refined. And of course, once you start getting to the 15, 16, 18, now you become men. Now you become the ball player that expectation. That's when you should be winning ball games without any hesitation. That should be the expectation. So those are the levels that I think would help as far as if the parents, want their kids to progress, to allow this to take place.
Yeah.
The something that came to mind. I'm a big supporter and follower and admirer of Dutch football. I was lucky enough to play over there when I was 16, and I saw things I couldn't believe. It was when I was over there when Ajax was European champions, and I saw them play an exhibition game before their season. And I saw Cruyff and Neeskens, and I'd never even heard of these guys, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And so it really got me personally to practice a lot harder, because I came from a small town that really wasn't a soccer town. So I started going to Hartford and playing pickup games with all the different nationality groups at about when I actually started doing that the summer before, but I kept doing that. And I learned more in those pickup games than I ever learned from a coach or in a team practice, because you win and you stay on, or you lose and you go off, and it's that simple. And the other thing was that the Dutch, they had a little stretch of time where they weren't very good, and they got together and they said, well, there's not enough kids playing pickup soccer anymore. We're too rich now, and there's too many cars in the streets, and so they're only playing when they come for the 2 nights of club training. So all the clubs decided to open their fields on the other nights for basically organized pickup games. They had a coach there, but just to let them in, and they come in and they played pickup games and they'd leave. And they did this for a number of years. I think it was in the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s. And it picked up again, and they felt that really helped them. So, the idea of these kind of organized pickup games, I think, is a good idea. A parent can do it. They don't have to know anything. It's hard as a parent. I'm a parent, we're all parents. It's hard to not say something to your kid when they're playing, because you want to help, but it's the other thing is to just play with them, just have like parents that are still can know how to play, just play with them, and they learn from, wow, look what Franz just did. He's not fast anymore, but he knew I was coming. He knew what he was going to do before. Billy knew what he was going to do before he even got the ball. How did he do that? And you ask him, how did you do that? Well, because I looked, and things like that. So I think that's something that coaches can, I think sometimes in our country, all the sports, coaches feel like they have to do a lot of drills. Otherwise, they're not coaching. But you can't really transfer a drill to a game. It doesn't really happen. So
I think Manfred Schellsch, I think, is a big proponent of, Jim, what you said of letting the kids play. And Cruyff had a great comment once I read. He says, "Where do you think I became a better player? Going to Ajax 4 hours a week or playing in the street 4 hours a day?"
Yeah.
And it's a no-brainer, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
It was easier in our generation because there was a million kids in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? It's not as baby boomish now as it was then. You know.
Right.
You know what I think that Franz, you might have an opinion on this. What the young kids are missing now. When I was like 15, 16, I got to be a guest for Trenton Extension for some, say, summer tournaments, and we'd go play the men, and they were all foreign teams, and these were like ex-professional players, like you said, when you played in the Haitian League in New York. And I can remember, I mean, at that age, I might have been 125 pounds or 22. And I would be a little scared. I wouldn't show it, of course. But the experience of playing against some 30-year-old foreign guy that doesn't care if he breaks your leg or not, if you nutmeg him, I think it's just a tremendous advantage versus now the kids they play in a tournament, they travel 4 hours and they play the same teams from their state.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know.
I believe you're right, though, Bill. And it really, again, I think that's why the love for the game doesn't exist as much as we did. We didn't have the computers or those games you just sit around and we're always out on the streets, always outside playing. But kids nowadays, again, unless they are asked to do it, they don't take it upon themselves to do it, which we're always out there ourselves. So.
And sometimes those lessons for me came even later after UConn, like playing in a Hellenic game. And Charlie McCulley would be sort of baiting me. He'd be hiding behind one of our teammates. I'd pass the ball. He'd just jump out like I knew exactly what you were doing and send the ball. And like you said, Billy, you learn a lot from those great, players who came from other countries. And Charlie was definitely one of them.
Yeah. Good experiences, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Franz, who was the best college player you played against?
Oh, boy. Played against. Oh, well, without a doubt, it would be Mucci.
Yeah. I would say Mooch.
Yeah, without a doubt. And
for me, it would be Ian Bain.
Ian Bain, yes.
Yeah. He was an unbelievable player.
Yeah.
Who's that, Billy?
Ian Bain. He played for Howard my freshman year.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some skill. Oh man.
Yeah. So Billy, again, just going back to Mucci. I admired the guy when we played against each other, but much more so when I met him at the coaches' conventions. I never met the guy, and we just saw him at the convention and just, Much, how you doing? Boy, seemed like we've been friends forever.
You know what, Franz? Like, I go on some of these to promote the book or whatever, and people ask me about Mooch. And Mooch, I say, as great a player as he was even more of a better human being. He just had this charisma, the way to tell stories. You never knew. If you didn't know he played soccer, you would never know he was this he was this tremendous baseball player and basketball player when he was real young too. You would never know he was this unbelievable. He was the most modest guy, humble, but just a terrific human being, just unbelievable, and a competitor and all. He had that will to win. But like you say, Franz, it didn't matter who you were. You were this great All-American, or if it could have been the guy that was the water boy for UConn, he would show equal respect for everybody. Just a special human being.
Certainly was, unfortunately.
I didn't know him as a player either. I knew him as a very difficult opponent, but I met him at the coaching conventions too, and we'd always get a beer together. We it was a thing we did, and it was funny. Every year it'd be the same thing. People would come up and, coaches, and they'd start complaining about their players or this or that, and they'd leave, and Mooch would go, "We got the best job in the world. As a matter of fact, we're at work right now."
That's great. You know, another one you talk about that I see recently as well is Tipper, Jeff Tipping.
Oh, he's a character too.
He's another one.
I was telling John once, it was 75, Billy. It would have been your sophomore year, and John, your senior year. We drew at our place 1-1. I don't know if you remember that game or not, but late in the game, Lenny hit a cross right on my left foot, and I put it over from inside the 6. And Jeff was brutal. He's like, "Jim, how could you miss that? You must feel so bad right now." I wanted to freaking punch him, you know. That's what he wanted too, you know.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
Franz,
I don't think after my freshman year, UConn didn't beat us again in my time.
No, we beat you 3-0 the first time,
Yes.
and we never beat you again.
Yeah.
We drew the next year the one time, but we lost the others. And you're right. Your junior year, my senior year, you were miles ahead of us because you came to us with what, 4 or 5 players out, including Mooch.
Yeah.
And you beat us 1-0, and we didn't really get anything. Yeah.
Well, you know what, Jimmy, I think we realized, like, say when you lost Franz, you lost the individual that could break down the defense. So even though because you were methodical, you could knock the ball around and keep possession, when it got to the last third, you really had a hard time creating. And we realized that. That's like the second, like the first time, like I said, that was my first game, and I marked Timos as well. Can you mark Timmy Hunter? But after that, he realized that the Franz was the danger, and we just had a real focus. Whoever was marking him, that we had to give him help.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that because the game you beat us 1-0 your junior year when it was supposed to be at your place and it snowed or whatever, and they played at our place, which was pretty amazing. We got something like 8,000 people on one day's notice, you know. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, we knocked the ball around about 20 times, and I was in on 2 or 3 of them, and Joey Ryan was near me. And on about the 20th one, it came to me again, and Joey turned around and said to the rest of your guys, "Hey, don't worry about it. They're the same place they were when they started." And I thought, shit, he's right.
It was a good rivalry. We really disliked you. You guys really disliked us.
Yeah.
On the field.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I learned something. I believe it was my senior year. Is that the game you scored the diving header on the corner?
Yeah, in the quarterfinal.
Who played that in? Zarin?
No, Angrick Stepanow.
Angrick. Okay. Yeah. Well, those 3 guys were awesome.
He could, he was he had a real slight frame, but he could hit a ball and it looked effortless, and the ball would just explode.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't think teams realize it. Timmy Hunter, those Hunter brothers, I always had issues with them. He was marking me there, and obviously I got ahead of him, and I don't know
we didn't give up a set piece goal the whole season until that goal. And I learned, we played man-to-man on corners, and I learned a valuable lesson, a painful lesson. I said, we got to have a zone guy on the front of the side of the 6. Somebody doesn't have to be tall. He's got to be a guy who can attack the ball. And if we had that, you wouldn't have scored that.
No, exactly. There was a big space there.
Yeah.
So the smallest guy on the field gets the header.
As a coach, I've never had, that left open again because of that play. And that was the play of the game. That was the play that killed us right there.
Oh, yeah. It set the tempo once we got ahead. And then we scored, I think Artie scored a free kick, another free kick, I don't know, 8 minutes, 10 minutes later. And that was the game.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we talked about before we came on, some of the most valuable lessons we learn are from pain and pain and disappointment. And that was definitely one of them. And every time I teach my players, Billy, I think of Step hitting that ball and you scoring that header. And I got to tell you, for most of the time, it wasn't a pleasant thought I had about you.
You know what? If that ball was hit 100 times to me, I don't know if I ever could have headed that ball better, because that ball, it exploded off my head, more because of his power, and I just caught it right.
Yeah. Paul Hunter was so upset. I was waiting for him to try to kill you after that. I think he did once too. I think he did.
I think that a few times, yeah. That's part of the game.
And you have that picture in the book, Billy, right?
Yes.
The ball already left your head or something?
Yes. Like I said, the ball, I struck it. I couldn't do it better 100 times. And like I said, because the field was narrow and the ball just would get there so quick. And we were a small team, and we scored a lot of goals on free kicks, because really it's the first one to the ball or to the space. And we were pretty good at that.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. The way we played was set up to exploit teams that played strict man-to-man defense. So if they chased us around, we could break them down. But if they just went back and played 2 banks of 4 and waited for us, we didn't have an answer, especially after Franz graduated.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy,
go ahead, John.
Remember, once we left and we played against UConn, we played that way against them in the spring and stuff like that, and we had some success even as older.
They couldn't deal with it. Yeah. I got to say one thing about an indoor tournament. It was after I was done playing. It was right when I was done, and you guys were playing in the UConn indoor tournament. And we had the 2 different gyms. We had a plastic type surface, and we had a wooden gym floor. And you guys were playing on the wooden gym floor. And I'd been watching the other games. And all the games, it sounded like elephants on the floor. Then you guys came on and played, and you couldn't hear. All you could hear was squeaks, a few squeaks here and there, but light on your feet like ballet dancers. It was remarkable, the difference between you and all the other teams.
We had some really good indoor players, like Randy Escobar, who didn't play much for us outdoors, didn't play a lot, but unbelievable skill. And Zarin and Angrick, Joey Ryan, really. Well, the one year Joe set up the tournament, and they put us with your 4th team, expecting us to win the group. And then as we advanced, we would have all the hard games. Well, the 4th team beat us the first day. So we ended up in the other side of the bracket, and then we breezed through the championship.
Maybe that was on that 4th team, maybe.
You might have been. I don't remember.
Okay, well, listen, I think we're going to wrap it up in a minute here. I hear from Felice Duffy, Franz, great coach in person. We know that already. Franz also, we didn't really talk about this. Franz, did you coach E.O. Smith girls before UConn?
No, I did not.
You did not? Okay. When UConn women started, though, when Lenny was the head coach, Franz was the assistant. And I knew a lot of the players. I was still around, and Lenny was great. And one of the things he was great about is he really encouraged his assistants to express themselves. He wasn't, insecure at all. So Franz was able to work with players and, not only pass on his passion, but also some of the tricks of the trade, and, Felice is saying Franz coached the club team first before Lenny. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was about to mention to you. Felice is the one who started the women's program over at UConn there.
Yeah.
She had asked me to help out, and we started as a club and then progressed from there.
Yeah. She says here, Franz set the stage for beautiful soccer, and for sure, every team I played on with Franz, we played great football. And I used to bitch and moan a lot, Billy, and Franz would just say, Jim, just keep the ball rolling, buddy. Just keep the ball rolling. He was telling me shut up in his nice way, you know.
Just give him the ball. Give Franz the ball. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, James Luce. Jim Luce came on. Here's a question for you. What is Jim Lennox doing these days?
Jimmy's retired. He still lives in Oneonta. Jimmy is a passionate fisherman. I mean, he always said he knew more about fishing than he did about soccer, and I thought he was a terrific coach and very knowledgeable. So he goes fishing a ton of times. He has some fishing buddies. They go to some unbelievable areas up in the Northwest, and that's pretty much what he does. His daughter Courtney is a nurse in Newark. Unfortunately, Jimmy's wife had passed away some years ago, but he's in Oneonta, retired.
Okay. He did a little stretch in Connecticut as the director of coaching. We saw him a little bit then, but Jim Luce says, Jimmy Lennox was my elementary gym teacher. So Jim Luce grew up around New London because his dad was the AD at Conn College. Jim was a great player at UConn. Didn't really get to show it there like a lot of us, but anyway, so Jim Lennox was his elementary gym teacher. Speaking about fishing, Jim Luce, you should go fishing with Jimmy Lennox. Jim Luce goes on a Facebook and he's holding these fish that are 3 feet long that he catches in the Long Island Sound and the Connecticut River like every Friday morning. And I know Jim's more of a trout guy, right? A river guy.
I think so, but yeah, they should definitely get together. Like I say, Lennox once made a kind. I know more. I wish I knew as much about soccer as I do about fishing.
I was surprised. The kid Brian Cook, he played at Hartwick well after you. He's from Connecticut, and he told me that he goes, Lennox would be teaching a soccer coaching course. And he would be tying flies on his little machine that he had while he was teaching the course. Yeah. We've met some great people because of the game, and I'm Billy. I'm so glad that you wrote the book because I spent years not liking you. And because I didn't know you, I only knew you as the guy that broke my heart, you know. And then the book, I couldn't put it down. I read it in 2 sittings, and it was really cool. Not only to find out the inside story about you and Hartwick, but you know, you mentioned Rick Dorella a couple of times. He played at Cornell. Well, we know Rick because he runs the indoor place in Connecticut, you know, and some other guys I can't think of right now, but. You know, they're all from the same era, and they're still doing it, you know?
Yeah, you know what? It's I've got some amazing feedback, Jim. Actually makes me feel good. Franz reached out to me, you know, told him how much he loved the book, and he read it from the beginning to the end. A lot of people, Tom Byer, this Ted Priestley, people just that some are players, and I always ask them, do you think I was like accurate in how I depicted your team or that particular game? And in most cases they say, yeah, you were, I think, very accurate. So that made me feel good.
You were spot on with us.
Yeah.
Well, we used to say if we could have traded Lennox for Maroney, we would have been at the Final Four.
Yes, you would have.
Billy, did you read that book about Indiana soccer where that guy worked his way up as a player?
You know what? I just recently read it. I didn't know it existed, but I read it. Dream. I forget the name of it, but I thought it was very good because he dealt with a lot of physical challenges and
paid his dues, and played at the end, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Billy, that as I said in the email, that was probably my first book that I went from start to finish as well, buddy.
I tell a few people that, Franz. I hope you don't get mad about that.
No, I certainly wouldn't be. But I tell you, not only that, the book brings back so many memories. Not only UConn players, but so many of those other players that you mentioned from the Philadelphia Textile.
Clemson, yeah.
That we played against some of the big ones. It's just like, wow.
A guy that I hadn't thought of in a long time, even though he's Muggsy's brother-in-law, is Hughie O'Neil.
Oh,
What a player he was.
Very good.
Yeah.
I mean, Bridgeport could never get past you guys, right, Franz?
Nah, it was too bad. I felt bad for him and Kevin Welch.
Because that was a great attacking up front for Kevin Welch and Hughie O'Neil.
Player. Yeah.
Certainly
Bridgeport was very good, but they really only had they had 6 great players.
And then it dropped off a lot.
Dropped off big time. So they could only do so much.
How was Brown, Jim? I guess if it was my sophomore year, it would have been your junior year. How were they?
They were very good. We had good luck with them. They knocked us out that year on penalties.
That was my senior year. Yeah.
Your senior year. Yeah. We drew twice with them that year. The guy, Fred Pereira, was a big-time striker. And then they had Steve Rabowski at the back, and he was very good. So they had a great player at each end, and they weren't super the rest of the team, but those 2 guys were so good that they could do it,
Yeah, they were good.
Who did you lose to the one year you didn't make the Final Four, Bill?
We lost to Cornell in the New York State Final.
Okay.
There on AstroTurf. That's where we lost every game. We didn't lose near the end in October, my sophomore year. Timo finally switched Mooch, Ron Hardy, and myself around, and from that time in October on, we never lost another game on grass.
Wow!
In a regular season or NCAA game.
Yeah.
And Rick Varela was probably on that Cornell team, right?
Rick, yeah, he was. Yes, he was in it. He was a good player. He scored against us.
Yeah. We had a lot of good indoor games with him. They would stack the Oakwood team because, of course, it was their tournament, so they wanted to win it. And they'd have 2 full teams, and we'd show up with like 6 guys and beat them. They hated us, It's all in good fun.
Yeah. Some fun.
Okay, from Tony Orta. Great show. 2 of the greatest players at the college level. Thank you, Jim and John, for bringing them on. Yeah, I tell you, I'm so grateful that you guys came on, and I belong to this group on Facebook, and I haven't said much. It's called Soccer Parents, and there's thousands of people on it, and I read the stuff. I don't write anything. I read it, and it's very interesting because they're all good people. A lot of them, they don't know, so they think their kid's going to be a pro. Their kid is 7 years old, and they think their kid's going to be a pro. And one lady asked 2 weeks ago, should I move to England now, or should we wait till my kid is over 10? And I'm thinking, they just don't know. And so I wrote to the guy running. It's a really nice guy. And his son looks like he's going to go to Yale next year. Anyway, I wrote to the guy. I said, please watch this show tonight on YouTube. Let me know if you think it could be useful to these people. And I don't want any money out of it. Just watch it and listen to these guys because, the thing about parents, they're always new. They're new, their kid's in it, their kid goes through it, they leave, a new set of parents comes. And so they always have this giant learning curve. And I'd like to help with that, by having them, read your book, Billy. And I think they'll be shocked at how many hours you spent. And Franz, if they listen tonight, they'd be shocked at how many hours. But I wish they could have seen you both play, because they've never seen a player like you guys, with their own eyes. maybe on TV, but I mean, to see a guy play at a high level and, never lose the ball and set up goals and score goals, they don't see that. They don't understand, and what it takes to get to that level.
So Jim, it's all parents making comments like that on this Soccer Parents Facebook.
They're not all comments like that, but there's a lot like that. There's a lot of complaining about coaches, which is legitimate, because a lot of coaches say these parents are paying a lot of money, first off, to play. And a lot of coaches are telling them, never talk to me. I don't ever want to hear from you. Let your kid deal with it. Well, the kid's 7, how's the kid going to deal with it? So there has to be some voice of experience to help. And John and I are doing this to maybe help some people,
Well, the game, it changed dramatically from when we were growing up, because it was all volunteers, and you couldn't put a price tag for me what ping if he was a person that charged you. And now it's all about youth soccer. It's all money, realistically.
It's all money,
unfortunately. Yeah. So it's different. It's unfortunate. And it's true, the parents, they have a hard time looking at their child and understanding their ability, or, they're going to be a Division I player, or it's
right.
Yeah, the landscape changed in Connecticut because I coached a long time, from town soccer teams and programs to club soccer teams and programs. And that was a big shift, quite a while ago now, but that brought a lot of money that people had to pay and parents had to pay into.
Right. And the coaches now, in their defense, a lot of these coaches this is how they make their living. They have to make enough money to, pay their mortgage or their rent and pay for their kids and all that. So there's a lot of pressure, and a lot of them a lot of clubs are selling. Well, it'll be worth it because your kid will get a soccer scholarship. Well, the reality is there aren't very many soccer scholarships, and so that's a tough one. Well, Victor Santos says, good program tonight with Billy and Franz. Victor doesn't know it yet, but he's going to be a guest pretty soon.
Well, it's a tough steps, though. Again, you go from the parents, Jimmy, from the parents to money to my kid, and what does it equal to? Expectation to win at all costs.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because winning isn't for kids. Well, look, I look at Ajax. Ajax is my favorite club because of how they develop, and I saw Cruyff when he was in his prime, and so I've always loved Ajax, and they put their best coaches with the younger kids in the club, and they don't care about winning any trophies until the kids are 15. Winning to them is developing players. That's winning, and that's where we drop the ball in this country a lot. And you just look at it, that what's the easiest way to win if you got a bunch of 12 or 10-year-olds? You put a really fast kid up front and you whack the ball up there, and you'll win most of your games doing that. But you're not developing any players. So. Okay, John, you got anything you wanna wrap up with?
No, it's just been a pleasure talking to these guys, and thanks for coming on.
Well, John and Jim, thank you so much. Franz, it's great to see you, almost in person. But
yeah. Let's help Billy out a little bit for another minute there. Listen, buy this book. It's a page turner. It's funny. It's no surprise, but everybody who's been a guest on our show, we've asked them the same questions, and basically the answer's been the same. Work hard, be passionate, and you know, if you don't do those things and have fun, work hard, be passionate, and have fun. And if you don't do those things, like my Israeli player used to say, he played for Maccabi Tel Aviv. He was at University of Hartford. He said his coaches, when he was a kid, if a kid didn't show passion, they'd tell him, "You're done with soccer. Go take up the piano or something, because soccer isn't for you. Do something else." And they meant it, you know. So anyway, buy this book. And Billy and Franz, thanks so much.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Really, it's a joy and
You're
honor
welcome.
to finally get to talk to each other off of the field anyway. And great stuff.
Very nice. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right, I'm going to end that broadcast now.